everyone, and welcome back to the RMTV Women's Podcast. This is episode 105. Today, me and Amy are going to chat through a couple of different topics, including our thoughts on the new England squads that was announced yesterday, and also Project Big Pictures proposals. Firstly, England then. New squad was announced yesterday. Some of the usual faces, some of the new ones that are being incorporated into the squads. Obviously this time around there's a game. Obviously the last camp that was going on was just sort of a training camp, get a few new faces in and whatnot, but this time there's a game on the 27th of October against Germany, I believe. So our squad will travel to Germany for that. Mixture of both experience and youth, I'd say, in there. Obviously, I think a couple of usual names missed out due to injuries. I think Jordan Nobbs is on there. I think she's out injured at the minute. And then a few new faces. Obviously for us, not for us, but it's a nice name to see. With Charles on there. Obviously she got the call up for the camp last time, but then this time she might actually be able to feature for the squad.
Yeah, I feel like that's one of the reasons why she moved to Chelsea in the first place. I think to sort of get a little bit more of like a spotlight on her.
Yeah.
To be able to be picked for things like this. And you can sort of see why she made that move initially, and now obviously it's paying off. She's getting a lot of game time, she's scoring more goals. Just people are just genuinely hearing her name more often.
Yeah.
Which is kind of sad from like our perspective, but then equally the player that she is, you want her to do well, and she obviously really is getting her first call up for like a game as well. In terms of like the squad itself, I quite like it. Like there's a lot of, I think you're right there's the right balance of like experience and then youth as well, because ultimately we're probably at that turning point in England squad now where you're probably going to be seeing more young players and maybe some of the older generation players. So for them to still be like side by side in training and stuff like that is I think it's quite beneficial for not just the older ones, but the younger ones, but the older ones coming through as well, learning new things and stuff like that. So yeah. I quite like it. Obviously, it's a shame not to see Babajide on there. Yeah. But when you look at some of the talent she's coming up against, maybe this just wasn't her time, and hopefully, like in the future, she'll get her call up and get a start.
Yeah, definitely. She keeps working hard. She'll definitely be in and amongst the England squad for the next however many years to come. I think one name that's on everyone's lips again now is Gemma Bonner. I just don't know what more this girl can do, to be honest with you. It's probably really disheartening as well for her, because she's probably sitting there thinking, well, why won't you give me the opportunity? And
yeah,
just seems a bit bizarre. He did say why. It's a bit of a long paragraph, so I'll run through it quickly. But he said, it is a good point. We look at that obviously a lot. You look at the partnership at Manchester United, Millie Turner and Abby McManus. You've got probably two lots of centre-backs playing together regularly that have an understanding. And then for some reason he goes back to his career when he was at Man United and starts talking about that. But then he comes back and says Gemma has been really unfortunate that she's probably just below the 4 experienced centre-backs I've always selected. We've communicated a lot with Gemma. We realise the level of performances she is producing, but ultimately other players are playing well as well. And I think that what we respect is the fact that in the WSL now we have a lot of English centre-backs playing to a really good level, and Gemma is part of that group that we can watch, we review, discuss, but ultimately you can only pick 4 or 5 or 6 in this one. He mentioned is the big one for him was obviously they look at centre-back partnerships, and he mentions Millie Turner and Abby McManus. But then he sort of shot himself in the foot with saying that, because you've got to look at Steph Horton and Gemma Bonner, who play week in, week out for Manchester City and do it really well. So I don't understand how he can say, oh, we look at that and we've decided to go with this pair instead of this pair, and then bring other people in as well. Because he's sort of saying, oh, there's players playing well. Well, is she not playing well either? Does she not deserve to be in this squad this time round?
It's super odd. Like I read it the same way as you did. Like if he's saying he's got really good centre back partnerships, surely like there's none better than Manchester City at the moment, and then like they play week in week out as well. And then you look, obviously Stokes on one of the wing back sides as well, so it works kind of well. So it's super strange. I think she definitely should feel a little bit, I don't know whether disheartened's the word, but just a bit like confused as to why time after time she's being left out. Like,
yeah,
if she'd have been included in the last camp and not in this one, I think you'd be less aggrieved because she's getting noticed still. But it just sort of feels like for some reason he's picking others over there. Like, I'd say Gemma Bonner was equally as good as Abby McManus, potentially even more. Better than Millie Turner at this point, just because of experience level, and obviously Grace Fisk as well is a young player, so better than her as well. But then, as I said before, you're trying to get that mix of experience and youth in it. So it's super strange. I don't know what it is, but I hope at some point we can see it a little better. Because if you look as well, like Millie Bright, no other Chelsea centre back plays for England. Williamson, no other Arsenal centre back plays for England. So if he's talking about centre back partnerships, he's not, because it's not showing that. The only centre back partnership he's got is McManus and Turner, and 9 times out of 10 they probably won't be playing with each other on the pitch. So it's super strange. I think he definitely needs to give a little bit more as to his choice.
But also, I've just been thinking about it then. If he's talking about like partnerships and whatnot, if you think about it, you could have Roebuck in goal with Bronze, Steph Horton, Gemma Bonner, and either Stokes or Greenwood. He's going to want to go out now. Or Stokes or Greenwood, who all play for Man City and who all play week in, week out for Man City. You can't get a stronger defensive back line than those who play club football and international football together.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think there'd be no, like, there'd still be questions as to why he's not picked it. There'd be no like discussion we're having in terms of him treading on his own feet if he hadn't have made those comments.
Yeah.
We'd probably just be like, well, why is he not be picked? But because he sort of contradicted himself, that's why it doesn't really make much sense. And I think if I personally was Gemma Bonner, I would feel a bit aggrieved about it, just because I genuinely don't actually think there's anything more she can do, because she's performing at the highest level and consistently well for at least since the back end of last season before it got cut short. Probably for the majority of time she's been at City, she's been proper solid. So it's really, really strange.
Yeah.
But hopefully she gets a call up at some point.
Yeah, I'm sure she will, hopefully anyway. Let us know your thoughts in the comments about it below, whether you like the squad, whether you don't like the squads. Who would you have liked to have seen put in there, given a chance? Let us know. Another topic of discussion today is the Project Big Picture's proposal to inject £51 million into women's football. So obviously there's all discussions going on at the minute about like reforming of leagues and whatnot. So I'll just quickly read through a few of the things and just to get everyone a little bit up to speed. So radical proposals to inject £51 million into women's football have emerged in the latest version of Project Big Picture, alongside an unprecedented proposition to form an independent women's league. The plans, which would be a first for the female game, are set out in the latest draft of the revitalisation document, authored by Liverpool and Manchester United as part of a major overhaul of the Premier League in English football. Plans revealed to invest £67 million into the women's professional and grassroots game each year from the 2022-23 season. So basically they're trying to, reform all the leagues at the minute. Ongoing discussions about it. Obviously a lot of teams have been impacted due to like COVID-19 and whatnot this season. What's your initial thoughts when you heard, they're going to form an independent women's league?
So the initial thing for me would be, is this going to be able to be sustainable for years and years and years, or after 5 years, is it going to be something that is no longer able to be funded. Like, do you know what I mean? Like the longevity of it. Because I think as we are now, I think we can. I mean, I don't want to say rely on the FA, but you have some sort of feeling that in the next 5 years it's not going to go bust. Well, I hope not. But I think the only issue ever with going independent is whether you can sustain it for a long period of time. And I think ultimately where women's football wants to be is obviously eventually being completely independent, but obviously financial times at the moment as well are so difficult.
Yeah.
So I guess it's hard to sustain that. But then you can equally look at it on the flip side, and the amount of money and investment that would be pumped into the women's game would grow even more. I think that the league this season has already sort of taken off, not in just terms of the signings, but in terms of the fact that there was prize money introduced last season with Barclays and things like that. It's just pumped up the revenue a little bit more. But to get even more than that, it's like you could reach endless limits with what the league can achieve and get as many people involved as possible. So I'm sort of 50-50 about it. I think I definitely need to know a lot more about the situation and see how it sort of progresses, to then like be really sure on sort of how I feel. But initially that's kind of my view.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think it's definitely, you're definitely sitting there thinking, oh, will it work? But then also you're thinking, well, the more money given to the sport is obviously better.
Yeah.
They're saying 75% of the 51 million figure would be invested into women's football and split 3 ways between the Women's Super League, Women's Championship, and Women's FA Cup, and then the grassroots game would receive 17 million. So
Yeah.
you can see where that money can go a long way. But then also, on the other hand, I look at it like you've got to compare it to when the American women's game when it all went wrong a while ago now, but before, they all went independent and whatnot, before the NWSL was formed that we've got now. So you can see where the trouble may lie.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's definitely one that you need more information on. The Telegraph have done a big article on it. I just didn't want to copy and paste the whole thing, otherwise it would be here forever. But if I remember, I'll link it in the description. But yeah, it's just, you don't know. I sort of feel a bit unnerved by it, because it's almost like, is that going to be enough money as well?
Yeah.
Because we're looking at it as like, that's a large sum of money, that is a big figure. But if it's only 51 million to be split between 3 competitions, well, 2 leagues and one competition, the FA Cup, and then obviously a separate 17 million to the grassroots. Like you said, is that going to be able to sustain us for a long period of time? Is that going to be that figure put in every single season for however long? It's nice to know that we're included in the plans. Obviously, that's always what we've always wanted. We just wanted to be included, and I think if it's Liverpool and Manchester United who are leading this in terms of reforming the leagues, it's nice that we're being considered. But then, if we're being considered, I want it to be the best possible reasons, and I want us to get the best thing out of it, rather than just, we'll give so much money and then what you choose to do with it is what you do with it. If you get me.
Yeah. No, I get you. It has to be like invested the right way.
Yeah.
And have the right like reasonings behind it, not just a tick in the box sort of thing. It has to be something that is properly thought out and properly believed in, otherwise it won't be successful. But yeah, it's massive if it comes off, and if it all comes together, and if it's really successful. I think it'll do absolute wonders for the game and the league, as I said before. It's just figuring out those kinks, really, isn't it? And like, just knowing about that longevity and whether it's like sustainable for like 10 years, 20 years to come. So we'll have to see how it all pans out. I guess we'll probably hear more as it sort of settles and people start talking about it a little bit more.
Yeah, I think they'll try and keep it as private as possible until there's actually something set in stone and concrete that we can say we're doing this for this reason, this is what's going to happen. Otherwise, it's just all talk, really, isn't it? But I mean, if it's for the good of the game, then I'm all for it. But like I said, as long as it just doesn't lead us down a bad path, then we just have to sort of see where it goes. But
Indeed.
Indeed. Yeah, there wasn't that many topics to discuss this week. In terms of actual conversations about things. Obviously, there's no match for Liverpool women now until the 1st of November, I think it is. We play Lewes away. Got a busy week when we come back. We've got Lewes away on the Sunday. We then play Man City in the Cup on the Wednesday. And then we play Sheffield United away, I want to say, on the Sunday after that. So it's a big week for Liverpool when we return. Obviously,
on heavy fixtures.
Yeah, heavy fixtures. Obviously, suffered a defeat last weekend to Leicester, which wasn't ideal, but it's not the end of the world.
Not detrimental.
It's not. We're still, I think we're third in the league, 10 points at the minute. I think Durham are top. I think they've only got 11.
Yeah. Obviously, you watched that game. I wasn't able to watch it all. What do you think was the reason why we weren't able to pick up 3 points?
I don't know. It was weird because we said in the build-up video before it of if that team plays that played against Man United plays against Leicester on Sunday, I'm quite confident. And the only change we made was the goalkeeper. And Laws had a pretty decent game, apart from the 2 goals that she conceded. She actually saved us a couple of more that we could have conceded. It was odd. I think Leicester just they looked like they'd done their homework and they played really well. And they just didn't give us the time of day on the ball at some moments. I think we got more frustrated than anything because we did have opportunities. We were really good up until it sort of reminded me of last season a little bit. Especially in the last 20 minutes when we had loads of the ball and we get into the final third, and it's almost like our decision making just wasn't there. It's like we didn't really know what to do. I thought when Rins came on, she was a bit of a bright spark for us. She came on at half time, I think it was, because there was a gap to exploit in their defence, and there really was. But I think they sort of realised that as well as the game went on, and were able to sort of deal with the pressure. But yeah, fair play to Leicester. They played really well, and their first goal was amazing. It was funny because the commentator was sort of praising us for how high we were pressing. And how much we were pressing them, and then Leicester literally just played around us out from the back and scored. And it's almost like a commentator's case, really, that he was praising us, but then we can see that literally 10 seconds later. So I mean, it wasn't a terrible performance by any means. It wasn't a woeful game. It was a really good game of football between the two sides. It was just that Leicester just came out on top, and probably deservedly so. To be honest, they played really well. So.
We probably were a little bit tired as well. Like that United game was a big game, and I think you do feel like a sense of fatigue. And that's 3 games in like 7 days, or 7 or 8 games as well. And I know it's not making excuses because everyone it's a tough fixture. The way it's a tough row of fixtures. The way like COVID and stuff's like panned out, starting a little bit later, whatever. It's tough, but you've got to sort of take that into account. But again, like you can't take the shine off what Leicester did, and they're going to be real title contenders, and that just sort of solidified that, didn't it really? Yeah,
because I wouldn't like to say it, but we are the favourites to win the league this season, just simply because of us being Liverpool and the way last season went and whatnot. But they're almost coming out and saying, well, you think you're the favourites to win?
Yeah.
Asking
that question of us, really, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think that's what Durham did. I think I mentioned that. I think opening game of the season against Durham, who are title contenders, and you're almost thinking in your head, oh, this is a win for us here because we've beat them before, and then it's a 1-1 and it wasn't the best performance from us, and you're thinking, oh, this is going to be a really tough season, and we knew that anyway. We knew it was going to be a tough league, but I'm not worried by it was one bad performance, and we've had a really good couple of weeks, really good start to the season. Let's just hope that.
I don't think we go on. I was just saying, I don't think that we would have expected to go the whole season unbeaten anyway. So it's sort of like, I know people are going to go, oh, you're only saying like she lost, but it's sort of nice to sort of get that out of the way, so then you don't build up this pressure of being like, oh, they've not lost yet, like, oh, let's do it. But because of last season, it almost felt like we're on a bit of a fairy tale. Like, this season we won every single game. Last season we lost every single game at this point. So it's super strange. But I agree, like, it's not be all end all, is it? It didn't affect too much our position in the table. It would have nice to have gone top, don't get me wrong. But we've got some tasty fixtures coming up. Well, whenever football comes back.
Yeah. So also a big shout out to Fanny as well. She obviously won Liverpool Women's Player of the Month, and then she also won FA Women's Championship Player of the Month. So she's had a pretty good few weeks, Fanny. Yeah. But I think that's pretty much everything we can chat about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've covered all bases there.
Another week.
Another day, another pod.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for watching. Remember to like the video, comment, subscribe to the channel. Give us all your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below about the England squad, about this big project thingy that we spoke about. And then if you want to have a little chat about anything else, just
anything.
Comments, and we'll reply more than likely. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next week with a new podcast.
Bye.